to QuickBooks, and let's enter one. So we're going to imagine we're at like a cash register, and we're going to say I'm going to order or enter a sales receipt. So sales receipt. Now, notice that we're going to need a customer. However, if you're at like a food truck or something like that, people aren't going to even want to give you their name. They're just like, give me my taco or my sandwich or whatever it is, right? And you're like, so you might just put a generic customer as the customer. Or if you can collect customer information, that would be great, because if they're return customers, that might give us some information about them and track who our best customers are and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to call it customer one. Remember that the tracking of the customers and how much you interact with them will be dependent on the industry you're in. In other words, like I say, if you're at a food truck and you deal with the same people all the time, you're obviously going to want to get to know them from a sales side of things, if not on a within the bookkeeping side of things. And if you're doing bookkeeping or legal work or something like that, you clearly want to develop a relationship and have information about them. If you're selling one-off toys or something on a Shopify store, then you're not going to spend a lot of time getting to know your clients other than to know all the people out there that like this particular toy, because it's going to be a one-off sale, right, kind of situation. So just something to keep in mind as you're trying to figure out what you're going to be doing and where you're spending your time here. So you'll note that the rest of it looks basically like an invoice type of form. And we're going to say that the payment method could be, once again, cash or so on and so forth, noting that this field is really just like an informational field generally that might help us to sort information. So let's say that we got let's say it was a check, just to imagine it's a check. And notice if it was a check, then it's possible that I could deposit it directly into my checking account, because if I got an actual check, I can put it into my checking account and I won't have to group it with other payments as I would if it was cash. So note, however, though, if I have a situation where I'm going to receive other payments other than checks and electronic transfers at the point in time that I make the sale, and I'm going to be forced then to use the clearing account of undeposited funds at least sometimes, then I probably want to use undeposited funds all the time as just my normal process, so that I don't have to switch back and forth between the checking account and the clearing account. So only if, for example, you only receive electronic payments, that's the only form of payment you will accept, or you only receive checks or something like that, would you want to put it possibly directly into the checking account. We also have a similar situation here where if you put it directly into the checking account, this sales receipt form is going to act like a deposit form in that it's going to increase the checking account, which means that when we look at the detail of the checking account, it's not just going to be deposits which will increase it, but also these sales receipt forms, making it a little bit more difficult to sort your general ledger or transaction detail report. Let's just make this a service item for the first one. I'll say this is going to be service item 1 tab, and we'll set that up. Don't I need to set it up? Service item 1, it's going to be a service item. And I'll copy this over. We'll say the income is good old 100 again. And description service item, it's going to go into the service revenue. This time I'm not going to have sales tax with it. And then maybe we'll do an inventory item to deal with the sales tax after. And so done. And there we have it. So let's go ahead and save it. So $100. Okay, so what's this going to do? It's a sales receipt. That means that it's going to be, we got paid. It's going to go directly into our checking account instead of undeposited funds. And the other side is going to go to revenue, which is driven by this item that's telling it which revenue account to go to. Down below, we've got the message and so on, that similar to an invoice. We can add a message. We can add attachments if we need to. Typically not something you're going to see on the sales receipt. Usually, we can cancel it, clear it. We can print preview it. Now, this is something you might be able to customize this form, but you might not need to as much as you would with an invoice, because you might not be providing it to customers, but you might give it to a customer as a receipt, right? in which case you might want to put your logo on it and all that kind of stuff to customize it. We have another course or section on customizing forms. We can make it reoccurring. We can customize, and in the more, we've got copy, void, delete, transaction journal, and audit history. We can save and close versus save and new or save and send. Let's go ahead and save and close it and check out what happens. Let's go to the balance sheet. We're going to run it to refresh it, and we put it directly into the checking account. So the checking account should have gone up in this case. So there it is. There's $100. If I go into that, drilling down to the source document, there is our sales receipt. Closing this back out, back to our balance sheet. The other side went to the income statement, running to refresh it, and it went right into the service item. So that looks good. Increasing net income. And then let's go to the first tab. Now, note if you're at a cash register, you're most likely not going to be spending a lot of time in the what I would call the customer center or in the sales tab, because you would normally be in here if you have to deal with accounts receivable. However, you might have a customer come in and say their sandwich wasn't good or something and they want their money back or something, right? In which case you might go in here and check out and find the sale that took place, right? So we can go in here, and I could do that by going to the sales, all sales. And so then this time I want to check out and sort by the sales transactions. So I want to look at the sales receipts. And then we can see here's our sales receipt that we have right there. We can also find it if I go into the customers, and we can search for the customer. So if one customer came back and we were recording the customers, which again, we might not always do if we're at a cash register, but if we had the customer information, and we can go in there and say, all right, there's customer number 1, and we can find that they have the sales receipt here and look at that information and track that information.